Hello, my fellow project managers. Welcome, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the 7th edition. I know lots of you have had questions about the Pmbok Guide 7th edition, and you've been wondering, well, should I open it? Should I take a look? Should I read it? I have some advice for you. This is just friendly advice. If I were you, I wouldn't. I wouldn't open it. I would leave it until it is very clear that the PMI want you to do that. Now, I know they've had conflicted messaging. One of the FAQ PDFs that they put out said, as soon as the 7th edition is released, the exam will reflect these updates. I'm serious. Have you read it? Do you want me to show you? I can show you. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a little bit unnerving. And I thought I should put this out to help those of you that are still wondering, what on earth are they talking about? Are they going to do it or are they not going to do it? So let's go to this document right here. This is from the PMI, okay? And in their FAQ document, it says, how does the release of Pmbok Guide 7th edition impact project management professional PMP certification? Let's make it bigger. And then it says, the Pmbok Guide is an input to preparing for the PMP exam and it's listed as a reference, but it is not a test preparation tool. The new PMP exam, which launched 2nd of January 2021, will continue to use Pmbok Guide 6th edition as one of the references. Then they say, the new exam has been planned for some time and is not related to the release of the Pmbok Guide 7th edition. We strongly recommend that candidates refer to the current exam content outline for up-to-date information, but they only update the content outline every 3 or 4 years. To make matters worse, when you read this document, it reads, when will the PMP certification be updated to incorporate the concepts from the Pmbok Guide 7th edition? Keep your eye on that. Now read the answer. It says PMP exam items are updated throughout the year as part of our continuous improvement and examination maintenance process. That would have been good. But they had to go further to say, once the Pmbok Guide 7th edition is released, it's already kind of been released, right? It will replace the 6th edition as reference to validate the content. So poor people are wondering, what exactly does PMI mean by this? Why would they put out two conflicting statements? One that sounds like the exam isn't going to change, and the next one says, once the 7th edition is released, it's going to replace the 6th. So people are confused. I'm confused. And I've been a PMP for over 16 years. I wonder why this communication is just so all over the place. But don't worry. I'm going to give you my 2 cents. You know, the exam actually does have some stuff that is in the 7th edition already. That's right. Believe it or not, it has had stuff that is talked about in the 7th edition for a while. So I'm going to show you really quick what exactly is in the 7th edition that is already on the exam. And this is going to be multiple series because there's a boatload of stuff in the 7th that is already on the exam and has been on the exam. All right, so let's take a look at what exactly I'm talking about. So the very first thing that is already on the exam is development approaches. This is in 2.3.3 in the Pmbok Guide 7th edition. So if you care to take a look at 2.3.3, where we have the development approaches talked about, do remember though, because the book is broken into two, we got to go into 2.3.3, and I'll tell you what page this is. This is on page 35 of the actual second part of the book, all right? Development approaches. So in development approaches, pretty much what you've seen in previous publications. We have the predictive piece talked about, the hybrid piece, and the adaptive. Now it's in a little bit of a different way. It says a development approach is the means used to create and evolve the product, service, or result during the project life cycle. You kind of get that. And they show you what the different definitions are if you keep flipping the pages. A predictive approach is useful when the project and product requirements can be defined. And then we go into hybrid. If you go to the next page, a hybrid development approach is a combination of adaptive and predictive. And then you have adaptive, the final one, and it says on page 38, adaptive approaches are useful when requirements are subject to a high level of certainty and volatility and are likely to change throughout the project. So the dialogue is very similar to what you have in other publications, but there are tiny little differences here and there. It reads, while agility is a wide mindset that is broader than a development framework, agile approaches can be considered adaptive. Some agile approaches entail iterations that are 1 to 2 weeks in duration, with a demonstration of the accomplishments at the end of each iteration. So if you're familiar with the Agile Practice Guide, you see the language has become a little bit more specific. It's changed a little bit, but not so damaging, all right? Then we've got this triangle at the bottom, which shows as you move to the right, you've got increasingly iterative and incremental approaches happening within, whether it's hybrid or adaptive. You're going from predictive to more iterative and incremental. So that is worth talking about. Okay. Don't forget that as we're going through this content, if you got any questions, I will be more than happy to take your questions. And do let me know if you've got any. All right, we're going into another part of life cycles, which it hasn't really been talked about in the Agile Practice Guide in this way. And this is why I would love to emphasize it for you. It's nothing outside of the ordinary. It's what you might have heard your instructor talk about, but the presentation of it is worth mentioning. So this reads, factors influencing selection of development approach. So what are the factors that influence the development approach? This is talked about immediately after on page 39, all right? So life cycle factors still. First one mentioned there is a degree of innovation. It reads, deliverables where the scope and requirements are well understood, that the project team has worked with before, and that allow for planning upfront are well suited for a predictive approach. So what they're saying is the degree of innovation isn't that high, use a predictive approach. The next one is requirement certainty. When the requirements are well known and easy to define, a predictive approach fits well. That's quite straightforward. Turn the page over to page 40, and it reads scope stability. If the scope of the deliverable is stable and not likely to change, a predictive approach is useful. And then it reads ease of change. If it's easy to change, then agile is definitely a better approach. It reads, if the nature of deliverable makes it difficult to manage and incorporate changes, then a predictive approach is best. So ease of change has a part to play. The next one is delivery options. Delivery cadence, what's that word? You're going to see that word again. Cadence, the nature of the deliverable and whether it can be delivered in components influences the development approach. Deliverables that can be developed and or delivered, I'm paraphrasing here, in pieces are aligned with incremental, iterative, or adaptive approaches. Some large projects may be planned using a predictive approach, but there may be some pieces that can be developed and delivered incrementally. Of course, alluding more to a hybrid mindset there. And then we go into risk. It says products that are inherently high risk require analysis before choosing the development approach. Some high risk products may require significant upfront planning. The summary is high risk. You need to think really well. It says other products can reduce risk by building them modularly and adapting the design and development based on learning to take advantage of emerging opportunities or reduce the exposure of threats. All right, so they're quite specific about risk and how you should look at it, and that's a good mention, something to take note of for your exam, all right? All right, the next one says safety requirements. Products that have rigorous safety requirements often use a predictive approach as there's need for significant upfront planning. And last but not least, we have regulations. And regulations there just talks about environments that have significant regulatory oversight may need to use a predictive approach. All right, if we flip the page over, we continue the dialogue. Actually, right here we have stakeholders. So going into how project variables can influence the development approach. We have stakeholders. Projects that use adaptive methods require significant stakeholder involvement. So your stakeholders aren't available, you might want to forget it. It's going to be hard because remember, business people and developers must work together daily. That's the mantra. And if that is not possible, it might be hard for you to pull off an agile project, an adaptive project where the stakeholders aren't available. The next one is schedule constraints. So turn the page over, schedule constraints. And it reads, if there's a need to deliver something early, even if it's not a finished product, an iterative or an adaptive approach is beneficial. And we need to be really careful with the 7th edition. Those of you who in the future might end up reading it for your test, because the way it tackles incremental and iterative, it muddies the waters. I've never really been a fan of how any Pmbok guide discussed these, because it's done a lot better, a lot clearer in the Agile Practice Guide. And I really wish they'd taken stuff from page 18 and 19 in the Agile Practice Guide and just plunked it in here, because the Agile Practice Guide did a phenomenal job of explaining iterative. Yes, we have copious feedbacks through prototyping and so on, but the delivery is one time. Incremental is several smaller deliveries, but iterative is different. This publication, they didn't make that clear cut as some of you are used to. So as you go through it, just look out for that. The dialogue is not as clear when it comes to that. Last but not least, we have funding availability. Projects that work in an environment of funding uncertainty can benefit from adaptive or iterative approaches. All right, let's talk about this one, organization. So how does organization affect your choice of project lifecycle? It reads here on page 41, organizational structure. An organizational structure that has many levels, a rigid reporting structure, and a lot of red tape, that's the summary, tend to have a flat structure. Use a predictive approach, I beg your pardon. Projects that use adaptive methods tend to have a flat structure. So they're saying there's a lot of red tape, it's going to be predictive. If it's adaptive, it's going to have a flat structure and may have self-organizing teams. And what we mean by flat is it doesn't have layers and layers and layers. You know, the concept of the self-organizing team is pretty much flat. All right, the next one is culture. It reads, a predictive approach fits better in an organization with a culture of managing and directing, where the work is planned out and progress is measured against baselines. So culture also will dictate what approach you use. The next one is organizational capability, transitioning from predictive approaches to adaptive approaches, and then to using agile methods is more than just stating the organization will be agile. So there's a lot that goes into it. Some organizations really want to convert over to agile because it fits them, but they just don't have the capability to do so. So it says organizational policies, ways of working, reporting structure, and attitude shall all be aligned in order to employ adaptive methods successfully. Next one here is project, team size, and location. Adaptive approaches, especially agile methods, often work better with project teams of 7 plus or minus 2. It's a unique way of putting it. We just usually say between 3 and 9. So this is a unique way of putting it. Adaptive approaches also favor project teams that are located in the same physical space. Large project teams and project teams that are mostly virtual may do better using an approach that is closer to the predictive side of the spectrum. So you kind of get the idea. So that is the very first point. You know, I've got 7 things I want to share. That's the first one. The other ones are going to go by very quick. This next one is McClellan's theory of needs. It's on page 159. Now, it might surprise you, but it has been around for a while as part of what is taught for the PMP exam syllabus. So we'll just read a little bit. It says, David McClelland's model states that all people are driven by needs of achievement, power, and affiliation. Three things that drive people. Achievement, people are motivated by achievement, reaching a goal, motivated by activities and work that is challenging but reasonable. Then we have affiliation, people who are motivated by affiliation seek acceptance and belonging. Being a member of the PMI, that's affiliation. And then we have power. Power, people who are motivated by power like to organize, motivate, and lead others. And it's not a bad thing. The people who love to lead, and that's a sweet spot, and they're great leaders. All right, so that's number two. That's the second thing that it's been on the exam or a candidate on the exam for a long time. So this is not, wow, this is breaking news. No, it's news because it's in the Pmbok Guide 7th edition. First time being in the Pmbok Guide to my recollection, but it has been a staple on PMP exam courses. All right, the next one is life cycle and phase definitions on page 42. Now, in all honesty, this one is kind of unique and to the Pmbok Guide. Never before had this been mentioned as clear as this. They talked about different life cycle terms in the 6th edition, but here they're just coming out of the gate and saying, these are some of the terms that you should be aware of. Now, if you're trying to follow me, taking a look at your book, this is in the, let's see, I want to make sure I'm not sending you on a wild goose chase. Hold on. This is in the 2nd section, I believe. It's very tricky. It's, you know, this book, the way it's numbered, you have 2 sections and they are each numbered as one forward, and that makes it very tricky when you're flipping the pages. I really hope that's not how the printed version is going to be. I hope the printed version actually has numbers. But anyway, page 42 in the 2nd part of the book, it says life cycle and phase definitions. The type and number of project phases in project life cycles depend on, in a project life cycle, depend on many variables. Chief among them is the delivery cadence and development approach, as described previously. So they give examples of phases in a life cycle. So they cut down the huge number in the 6th edition. The 6th edition, if I can open up the 6th and just look at what page that is on, they've got a quite a large number of life cycle names given. Yeah, they got a huge number in the 6th edition, but in the 7th they've cut it down. So you've got feasibility, design, build, test, deploy, and close. Feasibility, and the reason why I'm bringing this up and saying it's already on the exam, I don't know if you've heard from folks going in to take the test, they usually say there was some IT software kind of language. Like, you know, some folks say, well, what really is deploy? What do they mean by design? There's one that isn't here, and that one is implement. People say, what do they mean by implement, implementation? So these terminologies, they have been appearing on the exam in the past, shouldn't be new, but let's talk about them one by one. Feasibility, this determines if the business case is valid. Design, planning and analysis leads to the design of the project deliverable that will be developed. Build, construction of the deliverable. Test, final quality review and inspection of deliverables are carried out before transition. Go live, that's another one. That's another one. If your ear has been closed to social media, you've heard people say go live. What do they mean by implementation? What do they mean by go live? Well, this pretty much buttresses the point. Like, this speak is quite common in industry, so you can expect it to wrangle its way into your exam. All right, the next one is deploy. Project deliverables are put into use and transitional activities required for sustainment. And the last one is close. The project is closed. Project knowledge and artifacts are archived. Project team members are released and contracts are closed. And then it says project phases often have a phase review, also known as stage gate, to check that the desired outcomes or exit criteria for the phase have been achieved before going to the next phase. So you kind of get the idea. All right, so this is not new, been around, and people who've taken the exam have always said the language seems a little bit IT centered. All right, let's move into our next one. Oh, And one more mention. This is kind of important before we move away from here. I really want to call your attention to the importance of um, distinguishing between what is in the seventh and what is in the Agile Practice Guide. Um, when it comes to iterative, I've said it before, but I want to say it again. Check the Agile Practice Guide because iterative is only one-time delivery. Um, as you read the seventh edition, you might get confused if you don't have your eye on that difference, that table on page 18. And I want to tell you why I'm saying this. In the seventh edition, there's some really cool imagery on page 37. But when you go through it, if you look at the incremental example, it is probably not the best because you don't deliver a construction project incrementally, right? Even if there are little phases across and you get feedback, you generally don't do incremental, projects. You would go with predictive with a little bit of incremental in it, or you could just say it's hybrid. So be careful with page 37. It could throw new people off, thinking that iterative is um, delivering something multiple times. The language in the book it can be a little bit misleading. So be careful when you're reading it. Even when the PMI announced the exam change, like I said, I've never been a fan of how incremental and iterative I explained in the Pmbok Guide, 6th edition. It wasn't very good. So be aware of that. Okay. They didn't make the matters better in the 7th edition. So just be aware. All right, enough said. The next thing that you can expect on the exam is understanding how deliverables are delivered, delivery cadence. So a building, and then this is why I said be careful, because they're telling you a building is predictive. That's right. Development approach is predictive, right? The delivery cadence is single delivery. But if you take a look at page 37, you could get thrown off. So just be careful. But they've got a really nice slew of examples. And I'm just going to read where all this started from in the previous chapters. It's about a senior community center. And they start off using this example and they just follow it all the way through. And I think they were listening to some of the things people have been saying for a while, which is, why don't you just give us one example and follow through, and let's be able to follow. So on page 36, it says, a project to develop a new community center might use a predictive approach for the construction of the grounds and facilities. The scope, schedule, cost, and resources would be determined up front. The changes will likely be minimal. The construction process would follow the plans and blueprints. And then they're showing you, how the software to be used in the center would be developed, how the building would be constructed and all that. And then it says, as part of the community center, a project to establish senior services could be developed and deployed iteratively. For example, the first iteration could be Meals on Wheels program. This could be followed by a transportation service, then group outings and events. So this mantra, we need to be careful when we talk about sprints and iterations. Got to be careful when we use the term iterative development, because iterative is a one-time delivery. Remember that? But you go through cycles of feedback. Anyway, enough said. You kind of get that idea. So I found this to be an interesting one. And talking about delivery cadence, there you have it. Nice mention. This next one is a real blast from the past in that it's been around for a while. And it should actually say precision and accuracy. This is really more like precision and accuracy. And this has been around for a while. Back in I believe it was even as far back as the 5th edition. This used to be part of what was taught, because people wanted to know more and more about precision and accuracy. So what is the difference between precision and accuracy? Precision, as you can see, the PMI have a different image. I kind of embellished the image a little bit to expand on the topic because I felt it would be useful. So when we're talking about precision and accuracy, Precision means you are right on the mark as far as, accuracy, I should say, means you're right on the mark in terms of being on the bullseye. So if you're right on the bullseye, that's high accuracy. But if you have clusters around the same value, but they are not on the point that you're aiming at, you could say it's precise, but low accuracy. So the very first one shows high accuracy, high precision. The second one shows low accuracy, high precision. The third one shows you got high accuracy, but the precision is low. They're not clustered around the target. And the last one just shows low accuracy and low precision. All right, and that is I found the image to be quite helpful. All right, so it should actually read precision and accuracy. All right, so that's the fifth thing. This has been tested for a while. It's not new. In fact, I have written questions like eons ago on this. Let me open up the sixth and just have a quick check, because we used to talk about quality and grade and precision and accuracy. So I'm not sure if this is still there. Let me take a quick look. I don't find it in the sixth, but it's come up in the seventh in more detail. So I found that to be something you should look at. Precision, accuracy. I think the last time I saw it was in the 5th edition, so it's been around. All right. High accuracy, high precision. You got to know what that means. When you have those values that are close to the target, but they're not all on the target, it means something different than when it's really on the target. All right, you get the idea. So that is number 5. Only 2 more to go and we're going to be done. The next one is a regular favorite. People studying chapter 6. This is all about dependencies. And in dependencies, we talk about mandatory, discretionary, internal, and external dependencies. And what I like about the way they put this in the 7th edition is they really made it brief. They didn't go on and on. They truncated what is in the 6th edition. In the 7th, they made it very brief. All right, so that should read dependencies. There you have it. So they highlighted the major things. Mandatory is contractual and inherent in the work being done. Discretionary is best practices or preference. External, project and non-project tasks are usually not modifiable. And if it's internal dependencies, it's between one or more tasks and maybe modifiable. So I found that to be interesting. And there's a lot more stuff from chapter 6 I will show you later on that is in the 7th and is already been tested on the exam. All right, number 7, one of my favorites. And you've heard me talk about this recently. If you've not watched my full-blown video about this, do watch it. This is a situational leadership model. And the situational leadership model was created by Paul Hersey and Ken Blanchard. So we're going to read what the 7th edition says about it. Let's see. So the bottom line about situational leadership is, as a leader, you shouldn't try to lead everyone the same. You have people at different stages of their careers, different stages in the organization, and we should factor that in. So it reads here on page 156. Ken Blanchard's situational leadership 2 measures project team member development using competence and commitment as 2 main variables. Competence is a combination of ability, knowledge, and skill. Commitment speaks to the confidence and motivation an individual has. As an individual's competence and commitment evolve, leadership styles evolve from directing to coaching to supporting to delegating in order to meet the individual's needs. So when we talk about the development of people, I just want to highlight this real quick here. This is actually one of the tasks in the PMP exam content outline, task 2 under leadership. You'll find this as one of the bullets. I think maybe like almost the last bullet. So when you take a look at D1, this says self-reliant achiever. But at this point, people are just coming in, they got low competence, high commitment. So they're coming in here. Let's say someone's fresh out of high school. They come in here, they've got all this passion, but you need to be very directive with them. And then as they begin to evolve, you need less direction, and you can see that. And that takes you into S2, which is coaching. And in coaching, you need to give them high support and high direction, not as much as S1, but still a fair amount. Remember, they're new. We call this the capable but cautious contributor. You could also say this is a disillusioned learner. This is someone who has been in the firm and they realize, my goodness, I have a lot to learn. I thought I'd started learning stuff, but they become a little bit disillusioned. And for that reason, our behavior towards them needs to be highly supportive and highly directive. So on the X and Y axis, you have your behavior as a leader, but in these D1 and D2 commentaries down here, we have the followers' competence and commitment being described in those four. So S2 aligns with D2, right? Someone who's a disillusioned learner and needs some encouragement, some support, but also needs some direction as well, a lot of direction as well. And then we move into S3. These folks have been in the organization for a while. They know what to do. They're just a little bit disillusioned. Actually, D3, I beg your pardon, is the disillusioned learner. D2 is just capable but cautious contributor. All right, and then S4 aligns with D4, which is enthusiastic beginner. And this is someone just coming that has been in the firm for a long time. They're not cautious, and they're fully committed. They're all in. And for these folks, we want to use a delegating approach. In other words, once you give it to them, they take the ball, they run with it, they get it done. All right, so those are the four, and it is mentioned in your PMP exam content outline, so it is not new to your exam. Okay, and those are the 7 things I wanted to point out to you in the 7th edition that are actually on the exam. They've been on the exam. Some of them are new to 2021, like this one, the Hersey Blanchard model. It's kind of new to 2021. It wasn't mentioned before, but you should be aware that they're out there. All right. Now, I'm not asking you to open up the book and start studying it for the exam. I would rather you let me break these down cautiously for you, because if you open the 7th edition, it's all over the place. You got principles, you got new domains, could be crazy. All right. But I realize on social media, some folks have started reading the thing. And I think it's dangerous for you to begin reading the 7th edition. Instead, stick with the 6th. Okay. If I get any brainwaves of what I feel is in the book and it's not going to mess you up, I'll share it with you. Okay. I've put out about 5 hours of video about the 7th edition. And in those other 2 videos, remember what I said? I said, don't open it. Don't read the 7th edition. Okay. And I'm not advocating that you read it. I'm only exposing you to what is in there that has long since been on the exam, way back in time, and some of the stuff from January 2021. All right. So curiosity killed the cat. Don't open it. I will keep bringing you these episodes, telling you what's in the book. But until we get clarity from PMI due to their mixed messaging, I would advise you to not open the book yourself. Okay. All right. I hope that helps someone. Any questions? Questions or concerns? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining me. We're going to close. You got any questions? Be sure to ask them on the channel. You take care. Bye for now.